Once upon a time, games were considered a waste of time. Parents limited the hours their children spent on consoles, and teachers saw games only as a distraction. Today, however, we are witnessing an amazing metamorphosis. Digital games are transforming into the most powerful educational tool of the 21st century. This transformation is not accidental. Behind it lie decades of research showing that the human brain is literally designed for learning through play. We learn by playing from the first days of life, and this natural mechanism does not disappear with age. Why then did traditional education resist gaming methodologies for so long? The reason lies in the deeply ingrained belief that serious learning must be difficult, even unpleasant. But what if the effectiveness of education is measured not by the amount of sweat shed, but by the depth of engagement? What if the path to knowledge can be not only useful, but also captivating? These very questions lie at the heart of a new educational paradigm, where digital games become not just an addition, but a central element of the learning process. What happens in our brain when we immerse ourselves in a game? Neuroscience provides an astonishing answer. When we play, we activate the most powerful reward systems. Upon successfully completing a level or solving a puzzle, the brain releases a veritable cocktail of neurotransmitters into the bloodstream. Dopamine, the pleasure hormone, creates a feeling of euphoria from achievement. Endorphins reduce stress and provide a sense of well-being. Serotonin lifts the mood, and oxytocin strengthens social bonds in team play. Traditional learning, however, is often associated with stress and fear of failure, causing the release of cortisol, the stress hormone, which blocks cognitive functions. Particularly interesting is the phenomenon of flow, described by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. This is a state of complete immersion in an activity, where a person loses track of time and self, fully concentrating on the process. In a flow state, the brain operates at peak efficiency, and information is assimilated naturally and deeply. Well-designed educational games skillfully create conditions for entering flow. They offer clear goals, immediate feedback, and an ideal balance between task difficulty and player skills. Neuroimaging shows that during an engaging game, the same brain areas are activated as during deep learning, but with one key difference. Centers of pleasure and intrinsic motivation are added. The brain literally tunes itself to remember information that brings joy. What makes an educational game truly effective? It all starts with a delicate balance between enjoyment and learning. The best educational games are not perceived by students as learning material. They are perceived as games. Take Minecraft Education Edition. Children build historical buildings, conduct chemical experiments, or study ecosystems without even realizing they are deeply immersed in an educational process. The secret is that the learning content is organically woven into the game mechanics, rather than simply overlaid on top. A key component is also the reward system. Successful educational games offer a multi-tiered system of rewards: instant, for correct answers; medium-term, for completing levels; and long-term, for mastering entire knowledge sections. Duolingo masterfully employs this strategy, turning language learning into an engaging adventure with daily rewards, streak preservation, and competitive leaderboards. Adaptive difficulty is no less important. The game must constantly balance on the edge of the player's abilities, challenging enough to be engaging, but not so difficult as to cause frustration. Khan Academy uses algorithms that analyze student responses and automatically adjust the difficulty of tasks. Such dynamic adaptation is impossible in a traditional classroom, where a teacher works with dozens of students simultaneously. Finally, instant feedback is an element that fundamentally distinguishes game-based learning from classical learning. In a game, you immediately learn about your mistakes and successes, which accelerates the learning process many times over. A classic example is Kerbal Space Program, where players learn the laws of physics and the basics of astronautics through trial and error, receiving immediate and spectacular results of their decisions. What makes us learn? This question lies at the heart of any educational system. Traditional learning often relies on external incentives, grades, exams, diplomas. But games engage a much more powerful engine: intrinsic motivation. When we play, we do so voluntarily, purely for pleasure. It is this intrinsic drive that makes game-based learning so effective. Psychologists identify 3 key components of intrinsic motivation that educational games masterfully activate. The first is autonomy, the feeling of control over what is happening. In a good game, the player makes their own decisions, chooses their path and pace. Compare this to a typical lesson where everything is predetermined by the teacher. The second component is mastery, the desire to improve. Games offer a constant increase in difficulty, allowing the player to feel progress. And finally, the third is purposefulness, understanding the meaning of one's actions. In a game, there is always a clear goal and a visible result of efforts. At the same time, educational games do not reject external incentives either. Systems of points, badges, levels, and rankings create an additional layer of motivation. But unlike traditional grades, game rewards are perceived not as pressure, but as recognition of achievements. They come frequently, immediately, and in various forms. Social motivators are especially effective. The opportunity to share successes with friends, compete, or cooperate. The magic of game-based learning is that it transforms abstract knowledge into concrete tools for achieving goals within the game world. You learn physics not because it's necessary, but because without understanding trajectories, you cannot build a working catapult. You master history not for an exam, but to make strategic decisions in a historical simulation. Knowledge becomes not a burden, but a key to new opportunities. Imagine an education that adapts to each student. Not the student to the system, but the system to the student. This is the revolution adaptive educational games are bringing about today. The traditional classroom, where 30 different children receive the same assignments, is giving way to a personalized digital space that sensitively responds to individual needs. Modern educational games use complex algorithms to analyze a student's actions in real time. They track not only the correctness of answers, but also reaction time, error patterns, and problem-solving strategies. Based on this data, a unique student profile is formed. The Dreambox Learning Math program analyzes over 48,000 data points per hour, creating a detailed map of each child's understanding of the material. Artificial intelligence identifies knowledge gaps and automatically selects tasks within the zone of proximal development. Not too easy to avoid boredom, and not too difficult to prevent frustration. The Newton system adapts not only the difficulty, but also the format of material presentation. Some people better perceive visual explanations, some prefer text, and some need practical examples. The game determines the optimal learning style and adapts to it. The adaptive capabilities for students with special needs are particularly impressive. The Area X game helps children with dyslexia by automatically adjusting fonts, colors, and the pace of material presentation depending on individual difficulties. And the MindPlay Virtual Reading Coach program uses speech recognition technology to help students with reading problems, creating a personalized path to literacy. Adaptability also manifests in the emotional sphere. Some systems analyze the player's facial expressions via webcam, determining the level of engagement or frustration and adjusting the gameplay accordingly. Learning never happens in a vacuum. Humans are social creatures, and our brains evolved to interact with others. This is precisely why multiplayer educational games demonstrate astonishing effectiveness. When students collaborate or compete in a virtual space, they engage deep-seated social mechanisms that enhance learning. In the game Fold It, players from around the world collectively solve complex protein folding problems. The result? A team of amateur players deciphered the structure of a virus in 10 days, which scientists had unsuccessfully struggled with for 15 years. The secret is that collective intelligence, united by game mechanics, is capable of astonishing breakthroughs. Social interaction in educational games works on several levels. The competitive element activates the natural desire for recognition and status. Leaderboards in Kahoot transform an ordinary quiz into an exciting competition where everyone wants to see their name at the top. Cooperative mechanics, conversely, teach teamwork and role distribution. In Minecraft education, students collaboratively build historical cities, where each is responsible for their part of the project, but the outcome depends on the coordinated actions of the entire group. It is especially valuable that games create a safe space for social interaction. A shy child who is afraid to speak up in class can become the leader of a virtual expedition. A student with developmental features finds ways to showcase their unique talents within a team. Multiplayer educational games also naturally develop 21st century skills: critical thinking, communication, creativity, and collaboration. When a group of high school students in the game Europa Universalis analyzes historical events and collectively makes strategic decisions, they are practicing precisely those competencies they will need in adult life. Gamification of education is a powerful tool, but it also has a dark side. When the bright wrapper becomes more important than the content, we risk raising a generation accustomed to constant stimulation without a deep understanding of the material. Psychologists call this motivational crowding out, a situation where external rewards displace internal interest in the subject. The student solves problems not for knowledge, but for virtual badges and achievements. When these incentives disappear, so does the motivation to learn. Research shows a disturbing trend. Overly gamified education can foster a superficial approach to learning. Children become accustomed to quick solutions, instant feedback, and constant changes in activity. As a result, the ability to concentrate for extended periods, which is necessary for a deep understanding of complex concepts, suffers. Neuroscientists warn, a brain accustomed to constant stimulation begins to perceive any activity without immediate reward as boring and meaningless. This is especially dangerous in an era when many professions require perseverance and patience. Another problem is the illusion of competence. Well-designed games create a sense of mastery, even with a superficial understanding of the material. A student can successfully complete levels and get high scores, but at the same time, not form the deep neural connections necessary for the real application of knowledge. This is like learning individual phrases in a foreign language without understanding the grammar. In a controlled environment, everything works, but in the real world, the skill turns out to be useless. An equally serious threat is the standardization of thinking. Educational games, no matter how adaptive they may be, always have predetermined solution paths. They rarely encourage truly unconventional thinking or deep reflection, qualities that are critically important in the modern world. The golden rule of educational games is simple. If a game isn't engaging, no one will play it. But if it doesn't teach, what's the point? Finding the perfect balance between entertainment and education is a true art. Too much educational material and children will close the game after 5 minutes. Too much entertainment, and the educational value will dissolve in a fireworks display of special effects. The secret lies in organic integration. Take the game Portal, where the player solves puzzles with spatial portals. At first glance, it's just entertainment, but on a deeper level, it teaches physics, spatial thinking, and logic. Knowledge isn't imposed from the outside. It becomes a necessary tool for progress. Another example is Civilization VI, where historical and geographical facts are not just decoration, but the foundation of the game mechanics. The player remembers the characteristics of different civilizations, not because they need to be learned for an exam, but because it is critically important for victory. The key principle of successful educational games is embedding learning elements within the gameplay itself, rather than adding them on top of the game process. When a child in Kerbal Space Program builds a rocket, they intuitively grasp the laws of physics, because without this understanding, the rocket simply won't launch. Learning happens naturally, through experiments and mistakes. At the same time, it's important to remember, deep learning requires reflection. Even the most engaging game should create moments for reflecting on the experience gained. This could be a debriefing after a difficult mission, or a built-in discovery log where the player records their observations. This way, the gaming experience transforms into structured knowledge. How does one assess whether a game is truly educational and not merely entertaining? This question is critically important for educators, parents, and developers. Modern cognitive science offers a set of tools for measuring the educational effectiveness of games, going beyond simple tests. Researchers at Harvard University have developed a multi-factor assessment model that includes not only knowledge acquisition, but also the development of metacognitive skills. When evaluating an educational game, several key indicators should be considered simultaneously. The first is long-term knowledge retention. Longitudinal studies show that material mastered through quality game mechanics is retained in memory 60% longer compared to traditional methods. The second criterion is knowledge transfer, the ability to apply acquired skills in new contexts. Students who learned physics in Physics Playground demonstrate a better understanding of real physical phenomena than their peers who studied the same concepts from textbooks. The third aspect is the development of systems thinking. Strategy games like SimCity foster an understanding of complex interdependencies between economic, social, and environmental factors. Finally, it is critically important to assess the emotional attitude towards the subject. A meta-analysis of 100 studies confirms that positive emotions associated with game-based learning significantly increase intrinsic motivation for further study of the subject, even outside the game. How to integrate gaming elements into an existing educational program? Let's start by assessing the current situation. Analyze your teaching materials and identify topics that cause the most difficulties for students or seem boring to them. These sections will become priority candidates for gamification. The next step is choosing the right tools. For beginners, ready-made platforms are ideal. Kahoot allows you to create quizzes with a competitive element. Quizlet turns memorizing terms into an exciting competition, and ClassDojo adds elements of social recognition and progress. Don't be afraid to experiment with free resources. Many of them offer basic functionality free of charge. When implementing gaming elements, observe the principle of gradualness. Start small. Replace one traditional test with a game quiz, evaluate student reactions, and gather feedback. Remember that the most effective educational games strike a balance between freedom of choice and clear structure. Give students the opportunity to choose the order of tasks, but with clear criteria for success. For deeper integration, consider creating a holistic game system. Turn the semester into an epic journey where each topic is a new location, and completed tasks earn experience points and unlock new opportunities. Digital tools like Classcraft or Resly can help automate this process. Here they are, 10 golden rules that will transform any educational game into a powerful learning tool. The first rule: complexity should grow with the player's skills. Too easy, boring. Too hard, frustrating. The ideal educational game constantly balances on the edge of the student's capabilities, offering what psychologists call a managed challenge. The second rule: provide meaningful choices. When students determine their own path, their engagement increases manifold. Even the illusion of choice is better than its complete absence. Third, integrate narrative. The human brain is evolutionarily wired to perceive stories. Knowledge woven into an engaging plot is remembered naturally and for a long time. Fourth, create a safe space for mistakes. In traditional education, a mistake is a failure. In a game, it's valuable experience and an opportunity to try again. Fifth, provide immediate feedback. The brain learns fastest when it sees a direct link between action and result. Sixth, encourage cooperation. Social interaction not only makes learning more enjoyable, but also develops critical communication skills. Seventh, visualize progress. A clear understanding of the path traveled and the upcoming stages enhances motivation. Eighth, personalize the experience. Adapt content to each student's individual characteristics. Ninth, create moments for reflection. Without reflection, the gaming experience remains just entertainment. And finally, 10th, remember the main goal: learning. Game mechanics should serve educational objectives, not overshadow them. We stand on the threshold of a new era of educational games. Virtual and augmented reality technologies are transporting game-based learning into a fundamentally new dimension. Imagine a biology lesson where students literally travel inside a cell, observing organelles at work in three-dimensional space. Or a history class where you can walk the streets of ancient Rome, talk to its inhabitants, and experience the atmosphere of the era. Such immersive experiences form emotional connections with the material, making knowledge truly personal and memorable. Artificial intelligence becomes an invisible mentor, analyzing every student's action and adapting the educational experience in real time. AI doesn't just adapt difficulty. It determines optimal moments for introducing new concepts, identifies gaps in understanding, and even predicts when a student is ready for a cognitive breakthrough. The educational paradigm is shifting from standardized programs to fully personalized journeys, where each student follows a unique trajectory corresponding to their interests, abilities, and learning pace. At the same time, it is important to remember, technology is merely a tool. Even the most advanced educational games will not replace live human interaction and mentorship. The future lies in hybrid models, where digital games complement, rather than displace, traditional forms of learning. The golden mean is in the balance between innovation and time-tested methods, between engagement and depth, between technology and humanity.